I'm Harrell Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
And we are today have Stephanie Harrell with us. Hi, Steph.
Hi, how are you?
So I'll just show some beautiful book cover love from one of Steph's recent releases, Fake Dating Mr. Prince. So Steph, what do you write? What's your main?
Right now, my main books that I write are contemporary romance with a fairy tale twist.
Oh, very cute. How'd you get into that?
Actually, oddly enough, I was starting to write fantasy, and I realized that fantasy takes a really long time to write when you're trying to develop the world systems. And I wanted to get a book out, I wanted to publish. And a friend of mine had let me know about an anthology that was coming out. And so it was something that I could write. It was shorter, it was quicker, it was easier. And I did it. And I loved my story. I was so proud of it. And when I joined the signature course, you and I had that conversation about what direction my books were going. And, we discussed the fact that I had already started writing fairy tales. And what could I do with that? And so that really got me thinking. And I'd already kind of had an idea in my head about one scene from Fake Dating Mr. Prince. And I kept, percolating in my head about, well, what if Cinderella didn't lose a shoe? What if she had a one night stand and she left behind, a pair of, big old granny panties? And I thought, oh, I could take the fairy tales that we grow up loving to, in reading about, and make it a little steamier and sexier and still fun, but more like a modern story. So it just kind of started, and I thought, oh, I'll give this a shot. And I keep coming up with ideas, and for the next one and the next one. And it's fun, because at home, my children know I write, and they've seen my book covers, which they keep asking me why the guys don't have shirts. And, and then my daughter, she knows I write about fairy tales. So it's in some ways a great way to be writing stories with young children, because she thinks I write the fairy tales themselves. She just doesn't know to the extent. But I always say I got into it by accident, not by design. And I'm sticking with it because I love it.
Yeah, that's great. And it's often the way you find where you need to be. But the most important part is that you start somewhere. So just get started, and then you'll find your spot.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, who would ever have known? I mean, I could have been, honestly, if I hadn't started with that anthology, I probably still wouldn't have a book published yet today.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we would have pretty much pushed you.
You're like, just do something.
Put you off the cliff.
Right? I mean, my reader magnet, that only happened because, we'd had that conversation about how it's helpful, especially when you're a new writer. It's helpful for people to read something so they can get to know whether they like your style of writing, whether they really, it resonates, or they can, engage with it. And so I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have anything like that. I just have these ideas about all these books I want to write. And I wrote my reader magnet in a week. It just flowed, and it was there, and it was great, and, it's funny now I have that, but I mean, that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't pushed us, and stuff. And so, it's really, I think it's added an additional layer to my writing too. It made me think about it differently.
Yes. Yeah. So Steph's in my signature Get My Book Out There blueprint. And one of the things that we talk about, or one of the things I say often in that program, is 80% and done is better than 100% and never done. And that was something that came out of a personal experience, because I have a perfectionist streak in me. And Steph and I were chatting, and turns out she has one too.
And I just sit and laugh at both of you.
And you're like the complete opposite, kind of.
Right.
And So I want to talk to you about being a perfectionist or having perfectionist tendencies, and how has that been an impact on your writing and the business of being a writer? What's the impact been of that? And because one of the things I think people think of is that perfectionism is bad. And so it's, oh, I've got to get rid of that. I tend to think of use the parts of perfectionism that work for you, embrace those.
Right.
It's but there are good and bad parts to it, and it's just understanding when to let go and just go, well, I'll never get it 100%.
Right.
And 80% is good. So talk to us about that in your experience of being a perfectionist as a writer.
I mean, I think perfectionism, the bad part of it is that it can hold you back, because, oh gosh, you're gonna laugh at me. So my graduate studies was in counseling, and I wrote about the perfectionist procrastinator. And because that's who I was, like, I was learning about myself, and I think it kind of applies to writing, but you want things to be great. You want it to be perfect. And so it's never good enough. And that's the problem right there. And, and I think also too, for myself, whether it's the same for other people, but sometimes I don't start something because I don't think I can do it well. And that's not good either, because what do I tell my kids? Oh, give it a try. If it doesn't work, it's no big deal. Yet here I am holding myself to a completely different standard, and the thing is, you don't do something well. That's the reality, is you can't do something well the first time you do it. Most people, and you only get better as you continue to do it. So, and I think, we talk a lot about mindset in class, and, I think that is a big part of it. It's hard to turn that off. And you have that, it's really hard to sit back and say, what's important, what really needs to get done, and how well does it need to be done? Because we might look at something and say, oh, that's not good enough. And other people are like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. But we don't see that. It's like, I think you have these blinders that don't allow you to see how good what you've done really is. And, and so that's a challenge for me. And I especially find that with marketing and social media, because those are the two concepts that are really difficult. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, so it's helpful for me. I need to have examples. Like, if you can show me examples, which you have given me, Harrell, that then I can start taking those baby steps. And, I am a starter and a stopper, and consistency is something I need to work on. And it's too bad, because I love to be consistent. I love to show up, and I would never let somebody else down, but I let myself down, and that's okay. And I don't want to say that's okay, but, it's not okay. And in realizing that. So when you say like 80% is good enough, like, when I start looking at my writing schedule, which is, constantly changing and evolving as I learn about myself, and how I'm posting on social media and creating those things, that what I've done is good enough. It's going to always get better, because I'm not going to just let it stay stagnant. And, I think that helps with that perfectionist piece. And, it's funny, one of my writing groups, we've had so many conversations about this, because all of us in different ways are the same, that when we write our stories, we almost don't want to let them go until they're perfect, until they're like the most incredible story ever in the entire world. And, it goes back to, why are we doing this? We're doing it because we want people to have fun and enjoy themselves and maybe escape for a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, because they're still going to love it, and I think when, you start reading other people's stories, and I think that's the great part about being a reader myself, is that I read other people's work and I'm going, oh, I can do this. I did that. And I love this story. Why am I thinking that mine isn't good enough? And, and I think that's a little bit where the perfectionism is a detriment, or, bringing up imposter syndrome. And it's funny, we talk about mindset too. My mindset is, if I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do this? And that was a big push for me to publish that first story. I had no idea about branding myself, or, what am I going to look like, or what am I going to write? I had no planning whatsoever, but I did it. And it was because I remember saying to myself, I don't want to wait any longer. I've waited this long to do something I love. It may be frustrating at times, because I don't always know what I'm doing, but I don't want to wait any longer. I don't want to keep putting my dream aside, and it's great, because, like, my kids see that, they see me pushing through, and they see, my daughter's adorable. Currently I have, 3 books out, and I have my reader magnet, but I have to have 5 published books to be in the conference that I signed up for in August. And she keeps saying, mommy, did you get your 5 books done? Did you get your 5 books done? You need to get your 5 books done. So, you talk about being a perfectionist. I've got to get this stuff done, or she's holding my feet to the fire. But yeah.
One of the things that really helped me was my husband always told me, he said, a year is going to come and go, 5 years is going to come and go, 10 years is going to come and go. The difference is whether you're going to do what you're dreaming about or you're just going to be thinking about it.
Yes.
And he's, and I think that was one of the big things that, pushed me to go ahead and get, the degrees that I did. And every step of my progress with writing has always been that year is going to come and go, whether I do anything or not.
Yes.
Whether I do anything or not is up to me. And so, like you said, it's just so important to take hold of it. And, sometimes not being perfect is a good thing because people see that it's not perfect and they can relate to that because they may not feel perfect.
Yes.
But they will share you with that grammar error that you missed.
It's true.
Absolutely. And the reason why I say that 80% is good enough is because the majority of people, their 80% is actually other people's 100%. So we hold ourselves back from actually getting our the book out there or getting a marketing out there or getting something out there because we're trying to maintain an ideal which is just not possible.
Right.
I think one of the things I used to really be pedantic about was images, and it had to it has to be a certain way, and there's a certain and the amount of time that I had spent fiddling with an image. And then I was just looking at it one day and I was going, oh my gosh, I've just spent all this time on this image. And if I look at it, say, as a return on investment, is it going to bring in the money that was me spent? My time would be better spent doing something else that I know is going to bring in a better return. And here I am worried about, whether the logo is big enough or, it's in the right place or, something crazy. And I was just like, and I just had this moment of like, okay, I just need which of course is one of the things I say about setting a timer. When your potential is to go into the perfection rabbit hole, set a timer so that it pulls you back out and you go, okay, the time's up. I'm the only one who's going to know that that logo should have been that smidge bigger. So
I've actually had her say that to me too. Can you move it over just like one little spot? I'm like, no, it looks good enough.
No, that would be me too. I'm like, oh, if you just centered it a little bit right there. I mean, just
exactly.
It would be great.
I'm like,
most people aren't going to see that.
Is the world going to end tomorrow? If the answer is no, we're good.
Right?
Well, it might over where that logo is placed. You just don't know.
Just don't look up.
Oh, no, it's true. It's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, oh my gosh, the amount of time I just spent on that. I said, it's like, like I just, because I see if you should break it down by how much money you pay yourself an hour. I said, I think that just cost me $250 of time. And I go, wait a minute, if I give myself a raise, maybe like 500, but it's true. Sometimes you have to sit back and say, how much time do I want to spend on this? And, you've definitely, especially with me, you've encouraged to use a timer and to set a schedule. And I think for me that, because I will keep perseverating over and over and over on something. And whether it's a word choice or an image, especially with social media and trying to create things to go with that, it's definitely, I perseverate over how does it look? Does it look right? Is it the right feeling? And, there's so many things that you want. And most people aren't even realizing that that's what you're doing. Yeah.
And when you think of it, say, social media, say a post is, I don't know, it's around for say 6 minutes. And I've just spent 60 minutes creating it. So I kind of like, I was reading the stats one day about social media and the life of a post. And I think that was what's made me realize it was like, you were spending so much time on something that's only going to be alive for this short amount of time. And so you need to go do something that's much more going to have a better life, length of life, definitely. So with one of the other things I also talk about is to fail fast. And to me, this was one of the best piece of business advice I was ever given, was the faster you fail at something, or the faster you find out something doesn't work, the faster you're going to find out what does work for you. And of course, once I let go and allowed that to happen and go, okay, it's just a failure. It's not personal. I'm not a failure. It's just this
Mm-hmm.
particular tactic or this way of doing things doesn't work. So what's been your experience in failing fast? How have you found that?
I mean, I think that what I think has helped for me is that the times that I have failed is being able to have people give me constructive feedback, because I think, because otherwise, again, we talk about being a perfectionist, you don't want to fail. You
Yes.
never want to fail as a perfectionist. And, that's just the horror of it all. And, you start to realize, I think the more, and some of it's just reflection too, but to be able to move past that and be okay with it. But, I think for me, I keep saying to myself, well, how can I learn from this? What can I do differently or even a little bit do better? Because, as a perfectionist, you want it to be better. But I have to say, definitely saying to people, okay, well, or having other people look at things, because I start to realize I'm going down that rabbit hole, and I have to stop and say, okay, I need somebody else to tell me, do I continue with this or do I stop? Because sometimes I can't self-regulate.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the hard part, is trying to learn, like, when can I stop? And, it's hard. It's really, really hard to do that. It's a constant battle, at least for me anyway.
Yes. And I found the more I did it, the easier it got. So certainly now I can just go, oh, well, didn't work, let's move on to something else. Before it would be like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst person. I'm the worst marketer, the worst business owner, the worst writer, the worst course developer. All those sorts of things come up when it's really, no, it just didn't work in that moment, or
Right.
there's so many reasons why something may not work. But as a
Getting used to
perfectionist,
it.
yes, you tend to take it on as it's you that hasn't
Yes.
worked. And it's not the case at all.
No.
Because, perfectionists have high standards, so that we know this stuff's good. We just need to maybe reword it or rewrite, do something, do it in a different way. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So definitely need to be kinder to ourselves. So any perfectionists out there, it's okay. You can be kind to yourself.
You're not alone.
Yes.
I don't have a clue what you guys are talking about.
I mean, it's good and bad, and it's great too when you work with people who aren't the exact same, because you can't grow if you don't know what needs to change.
Yes. Yeah.
Or if you don't have a model to do things differently, and so I think that it's really helpful, we were joking, like, Susan being on the opposite end and so different, but it is helpful because neither one of us, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's like, you have to go with what works for you, because I think I've also found, like, if I fight against my inner nature, that doesn't help. But how can I adapt it? Like, I think that's the biggest part, is what can you do to adapt what you're doing so that you're not spinning, like you're, they have like hamster wheel, you're not going round and round and round. And then by the time you're done, you're frustrated and you're sapped, like your energy is just gone, when there's so many more things to do too. You don't want that to keep happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I think
agree.
it's finding your own style and being happy with that, whatever that looks like. Definitely.
And that's one of the things I loved about what Harrell told me, is that even though I'm not the most, if you were to walk into my office, you would and look at my desk, you'd be like, oh my God, it looked like, paperwork just threw up everywhere. But it's like the other day, my husband came in and he needed something, and bam, I had it for him immediately. If you need something, I know where it's at in this chaotic scene, or at least the location to where it should be at, so that I know where to start looking. And I'm the same way with my stories. When I'm writing, I don't, I have the story Bibles now, but for the most part, I still rely on the fact that I remember the story, I remember the scene in my head, I bring the story up, and I know what to look for to go find it.
Yeah.
And so I may have 10 stories up at the same time while I'm writing this one to make sure I've got everything in place, where, someone who's more organized might have an actual written out sheet so that they can just look and see all of that information. Yeah, like Norel. Where, and for me, that doesn't necessarily work, or I have to have a combination of the two. So one of the things I loved was the fact that it's okay to be, the super organized like both of you are, or to be the chaotic organized like I am. It's whatever style fits you and your personality, so that you don't feel stressed out about trying to be, my husband's like you guys. He's very, very organized. So you go into his office, everything has a place and everything is in its place. And so he wanted basically, we tried to do that with me, and I was in tears because I couldn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we finally had to agree that I'm just different in the way
Yeah.
I organize things, but it's okay because it works for me.
Right.
And now that I know that, I'm okay with it because nowhere else that I could be.
Yeah. Well, when it
That's
comes to being
true.
organized, some people like to see their things, and if they can't,
Mhm.
they get really tense because they're
tense.
fearful. Yes. And other people like their stuff away. I'm out of sight. That definitely
Mhm.
for me. I don't like to see stuff. So I would be more the show home. Yeah. If we were, say, talking in real estate, I'd be the show home where there's clear spaces everywhere, and Susan likes to see her stuff. She likes
Right.
her things in sight. So she might have well, she not might, she does have piles of papers and books and equipment and stuff. But she knows, and that's where it comes down to.
Right.
It's not so much what it looks like, but can you find what you need when you need it?
Mhm.
So, and if you tried to make Susan like me or me like her, neither one of us would be able to find anything.
Yeah, me, it's out of sight, out of
Not our
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Also, like, how does it make you feel to be in that
Yes.
environment? Because, like you said, Susan, I think you used the word stressed. If you feel stressed by your environment, you're not going to be as productive either.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I
I feel
have
a sense of relief when my stuff is. I think my bookcase was all messy, and I was looking at the side. And it's so funny. I remember I cleaned it all off. I organized it, and it's just a bookcase, but it has all the stuff I need and my, the books that I use when I write. And I remember just walking away going, "Oh, I feel so happy right now." You're like,
and it's an actual emotion. And
yeah.
me, I get to a point where it's like, okay, my tolerance level is even as bad for me. And then I'll spend a day and I'll just clean everything and it looks great. But then I start filling up these spaces.
Right.
And and I'm not a hoarder. It's because if you were to walk into the rest of my house, it's everything's clean, the counters are
Yeah.
cleaned off, there's not stuff everywhere. It's just in my office, because the way my brain is working, I'm working on multiple things. I
Yes.
need to be able to touch it. I need to know
Right.
that it's there where I left it. When I'm done with it, it gets filed away. But
Right.
until I'm done with it, it's out. So, go with definitely with what is your non-stress level.
Yes.
Everything in its place I would be literally, I'm in tears because I feel I can't get to it. I can't, I don't know where it's at, when everything is out of sight. It's just not the way I function. So
Right.
it's okay to be the odd person out.
It is.
Yeah.
It's all about knowing your own style and whatever that is, whether it comes to the time. Like
Yes.
we have talked previously about time and how from both of you like writing at night. That's when
Yes. Or most
it
productive.
sparks for you. For me, 6 a.m. to midday is my golden hour or hours. That's when, and then in the afternoon, by nighttime, don't worry. And so it's about knowing the rhythms and your own cycles and who you are. And as you say, Steph, adapting if there's there's always good and bad, I think, in all characteristics. So if you're a perfectionist, some of those things you need to be aware of so that you don't spend hours on a graphic when that actually you could have spent that hours writing. It's stuff like that. But when you know yourself, you know when to pull back, you know when to indulge, because sometimes it's happy and healthy just to spend a bit more time, say on an image or something. And it's okay so long as it's not all the time. Yeah.
Right. And I think that was important too. It's funny. And I'm trying to think of how you had phrased it one night. We were talking about like our, because the bulk of our time should be writing, that's our job. That's what we're doing. And all of the other pieces of it shouldn't take up time. And I think like in my head, I created this number, like 70% writing, 30% other.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you'd used that number, if I just made it up, like I said, if I made it up in my head or not, but I started thinking about that in terms of my time, because for the longest time I had a sort of schedule in my head, but not a written down schedule of specifically when I'm like, it's writing here or so, social media here, and I need that. And I've learned that I can't just be like, oh yeah, so my time to work is from 8 to 5, or, I can't just set a time. I have to set very specific goals too, because otherwise it just doesn't get done either. And, we forget because we get so involved in those little pieces that are new to us, or that can take up time. I mean, think about people just scroll through social media and it take, you could lose 2 hours. It's the same thing when you're trying to create that content that goes on it. And, where is your time best served too? So, I keep, I'll sometimes remind myself of that, my time should be spent writing. So, and again, it goes into the perfectionist piece. So how much time do I have left over to do X? And if I don't finish it, but at least I tried, then it needs to be good enough.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steph, for sharing with us. I'm sure for any of the perfectionists out there, we totally understand, we totally get you. And I love some of the tips that you've shared as to how you've adapted your perfectionist, tendencies to work for you, because it certainly can. It's not something that we have to change by any means. So, Steph, if somebody wanted to, have a look at your books, get in touch with you, how would we go about doing that?
You can go to my website. So it's stephanieharrell.com. Right now I am in Kindle Unlimited. So I'm also, exclusive that way through Amazon. But other than that, you can click on the links on my website to get to it, or go there as well.
Okay, brilliant. Rightio. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, Steph. Good luck with the writing.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. We've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.